Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm your host, Joe Dellera, and I'm joined by Andrew O'Connor Watts. Andrew, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I was just really vibing on that intro music, man. I love the dough. I realize how much that like fires me up for the show. Just throwing that out there. How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing pretty good. Sometimes like it helps you get into that little bit of a vibe, like you're like kind of bopping along, and then all of a sudden our video comes on, and it's just like shit, like it's like I'm being watched right now.
Exactly.
No, but it's definitely fun. So I'm excited to talk about this slate. I know we were kind of kicking it off air, and we were talking about how this time of the year is always like an absolute slop fest. There's a couple teams obviously jockeying for playoff positioning. And then there's other teams that are jockeying for lottery balls and lottery positioning. So when you're looking at the slate right now, I feel like it's even more clear where those lines are, right? And some players have now been ruled out for the rest of the season. We're seeing, like Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, LaMelo Ball. What do you think about that? How do you try to navigate the end of the NBA season?
Yeah, Tyrese Maxey too just came out.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I thought Tyrese was already shut down. When I saw that news, I was like, yeah, dude. Like it was like the Shams notification came on.
All right.
Like,
our guy, Hayden.
What's up, Hayden? How you doing?
In a hospital bed. Jeez.
Oh, sheesh. Yikes, dude. Hope you're okay.
Feel better, dude.
Oh no. Yeah, feel better.
But so end of the season you were saying.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to be careful, you want to tread lightly if you're not confident in an angle. I think a lot of some of these angles and trends that we've discussed throughout the season maybe don't apply as much. If there's certain like teams off a win, teams off a loss kind of stuff, some of those might not translate as well now because a lot of that information was before teams had this solidified motivation, right?
Yeah.
So not as many teams tanking, not as many teams know, okay, we really have to win to get this, playoff spot. So that kind of thing. That said, I'm going to use a bunch of trends to justify some picks later. So,
hey, look, I think it's part of it too, is like, you have to really like sort through some of the trends and like what's noise, understanding, whether like when you're looking at a small sample size, you're saying, well, is this real? Is this not real? And trying to figure out, what the importance or what the significance of some of these data points are. And like one of the things that's been new, and we're going to talk about this game a little bit later, but the firing of Taylor Jenkins, I think, kind of made waves throughout the NBA. It's a little unprecedented to have a coach fired at this point in the season with that record. Obviously, they've been spiraling to a degree since the All-Star break. I think this is a great game for Memphis today, and I won't spoil our conversation on this too much, but what do you think overall about the firing of Taylor Jenkins? And, obviously the Bucks got rid of Adrian Griffin last season, but that was still even earlier than this.
Exactly. I think that even though both were surprising just based on the time of the season, you expect that kind of to happen more midway through. So, you've got enough of a sample size to say, hey, this isn't working, but there's also still enough sample size, of the season left to kind of figure some stuff out. The weird thing with the Jenkins firing is like whether or not it's surprising that he got fired at all, which it was to me. I'm not obviously in on the Memphis day-to-day stuff. I think people closer to the team and that follow things maybe, more team to team more closely, we're not surprised by this.
Yeah.
To me, it was surprising, but less so that he got fired and mostly when. I mean, it like you said, like this late in the season, it doesn't feel like there's enough time to kind of figure out, the new stuff with the new head coach who's stepping in. Now, he was a part of the staff already, so maybe there's some continuity there that won't be affected. But yeah, this late in the season is very shocking for a team that is in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a shocking move. And we'll just kind of have to figure out how that's going to go. But when we look at some of the other things going on in the NBA, obviously one of the game of probably the week was this double overtime thriller between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jokic with preposterous. I think it was a record for the most points in a triple-double ever. 61-point triple-double at the end of the game. We had the full Russell Westbrook experience, which sucks for him, honestly, because I think he's been playing really well for Denver. But what did you have any takeaways from that? With that type of Jokic performance, do you think that he could crack into the MVP conversation? I know the straw poll just came out. Shea was leading 77-23, but it's a pretty binary decision, and the voting was before that game.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly – I think it'll have an impact. I think it will. But whether or not it's enough to kind of overtake Shea's position now, I think for better or worse, there is some voter fatigue with Jokic, as crazy as that sounds. Like, he's so incredible. And I don't know. Jokic is one of my favorite players. He's incredible. I do think that SGA is very deserving of an MVP if he wins this season. He's doing things. He's having one of the best guard seasons we've seen. And I think that that's notable. He's scoring on a level that we haven't seen in a long, long time. Just, leading in 20, 30, 40, and 50-point games, leading the entire NBA. And I think most importantly for Shea's case is the Thunder are having an insane all-time season, regular season. That is, and it's because of him and his greatness. So I don't think that can be ignored. You could argue whether he's literally more valuable or not than Jokic, but the fact that they're having such an incredible season, I think, is legitimate reason to give him the award, as great as Jokic has been. I think either guy's deserving. SGA, totally fine with him taking it home this season.
Yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong picking between either of them, but that was definitely a killer. Watching that game, just saying all right, well, if he is able to make a crack in here, but I put out there, I gave it out in my dub club. I gave out Jokic because they still had the market up for clutch player of the year.
Yeah.
And Turvey, our good friend Turvey, has an excellent bet on Jokic preseason to win clutch player of the year, and I gave it out as 9-1, right, in overtime. And by the now
terrible number,
he's plus 160 now. So there's obviously some of that value there. If they were able to close out that game, I probably would have helped the case, but I don't think they're really holding the Russ thing against him there.
I don't think it matters for clutch. I think, because you guys have talked about this a lot on buckets, and it's a great angle. You guys super sharp with it. I do think this is as Turvey likes to say, this is kind of a control sort clutch points award. There's not a lot of narrative to it, it doesn't seem like.
Yeah.
So, and given the fact that they went into double overtime and it was a close game, all of that, Jokic was just piling on clutch points, points in the clutch that entire overtime. So it's a great bet, 9-1. When I saw you posted in the app, and I was just like, God damn it!
I wish I could get that.
I was smart, dude. Yeah,
that was a good spot. So it was in part because I was talking to Brandon Anderson, our other friend over there, and he was talking about it, and I was like, wait, hold up a sec. So so it worked out pretty well. But no, it was impressive performance, and but let's move on from the past for now, and we'll talk about today's slate. So the games, obviously, we've been talking about this. The slates are a little disgusting with some of the spreads, some of the motivational issues, things like that. But we do have a number of ways to kind of capitalize on some of those angles here. So let's dive into the first game on the slate. We've got the Orlando Magic versus the Washington Wizards, a team that is very much trying to focus on the future here. And this is a game where Orlando is a significant favorite. They're 15.5-point favorites, despite the total being only 211.5. That always kind of scares me as a general point when I see a total that's so low and two teams. I mean, Orlando just can't score either, and then a spread like that. How do you kind of tackle, regardless of this game? I know you have a couple angles later, but regardless of this game, how do you feel about some of those games where the spreads are so significant and the totals are relatively low?
Yeah, I think it makes it tougher to. It makes me look at a team total under for the team that isn't that for the underdog. I that's kind of my first look. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, like the books are onto that because look, if you think that there's not going to be a lot of scoring, but that a team is going to win by a significant amount, then I think there's a world where a pretty like feasible world where the team that's like the team could go like the Wizards could go under their team total and still cover the spread,
Yeah.
the game spread.
Yeah.
So I think there's just more outs, almost maybe not outs is the wrong word, but it's kind of a more logical step to kind of look at that under. Now in this particular case, I project over for the Wizards.
Yeah.
So it's not like totally, I kind of lean to the Wizards with such a big spread. I do make this closer to like double digits rather than 15.5, but they are coming off a win, an outright win against the Kings, which is just hilarious.
So funny.
They're so bad, man. But yeah, I just think that it's just not really a spot that I want to look at the Wizards coming off that win. I don't know how motivated they'll be. Orlando needs to win. They're kind of in the mix of this play-in mix. I think they're unlikely to catch the 6th seed, but I believe it still is feasible that they could if they like win out and the other team, I think it's the Bucks and the Pistons are within range.
Yeah.
If they have a rough rest of this, but the angle that I was looking at, and this is one of our Rithmm angles here, one of our two Rithmm props on our guy Paolo for the Magic. I'm looking at 2 of his unders, and I want you to talk me through this. I want to talk you through it, and then let me know what you think of it. Looking at under 1.5 threes and under 27.5 points. I'm probably not gonna take both, and I might not take any of them. But last time they played a couple weeks ago, he had 30 points with 3 threes. In his career, he averages 21 points, 1.1 threes against Washington. He's under this points line in 7 of 10, under the threes line in 8 of 10 against Washington. No Richaun Holmes, which means, less rim protection. So that's kind of one of my like sketchy stay away, things. I mean, Richaun Holmes is not exactly Rudy Gobert, but just having a body down there to like mess with him a little bit. Washington, as bad as their defense is, 12th in opponent 3-point rate, meaning they limit opponent 3-pointers. They're also 10th in mid-range rate, which is where Paolo shoots from the most. Plus, we got the blowout potential. He could sit even if like, let's say they're cooking, he's cooking, and then they, but they're up 20. He might just not play for a good portion of the 4th. What do you think of either of those angles? Do you like any of them? Is it too gross? What do you think?
I do like the angle. I think it makes a lot of sense here. The under, I think the under is a favorable play just for Paolo generally. I always think that he's a little bit inefficient, to be honest with you. Like it's one of my biggest criticisms of Paolo. I think that he kind of gives me like better Julius Randle vibes, like a little bit. That's kind of how I feel like when I watch him play. Like it just he can have these games where he's incredible, can put up monster performances, can dime, can obviously rebound. He's a very physical player. But I do struggle to see him with some of the efficiency. So I do like this under. I think it's a sharp play. And I think you could go, like you said, I think you go either way at the 1.5 threes or 27.5 points. I think that right now there's a 28.5 hanging out there on MGM. So if you are going to grab it, I think that there's probably just a smidge more value on the 28.5 at -120 right now.
I like that. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm gonna do that.
I think I'm gonna tell you on that one. I like that one.
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive into the next game on the slate. We've got the Bucks versus the Sixers, and this is a game that when we looked at this earlier in the season, you probably thought, hey, this is going to be a pretty important game for the Eastern Conference playoff picture. These could be 2 teams vying for the 1 seed, maybe even the 2 seed, and now we have Bucks -12.
Yeah.
So the Sixers are clearly focused on trying to retain their pick, which is top 6 protected. And this is a tough spot for them against a Milwaukee team that really needs this victory. So are you going to back Milwaukee? Or are you going to lay the points here?
I am. Yeah, this is one of my best bets tonight. Probably my best bet. Although we did just see it move down to 11.5, which is good for anyone that wants to get in right now. Even fully healthy, the Bucks kind of own Philly. They've won 5 straight covers. They've mostly been favorites. But Milwaukee just needs this more than the Sixers, who are, as we mentioned, are kind of, they're free falling. They just announced Maxi's not coming back. We already knew that. But they're 41-34. The Bucks are half game behind Detroit for the 5 seed. And like we mentioned earlier, Magic kind of in range of that 6 seed. So yeah, I just think this is a great get right spot for the Bucks, who have struggled a bit lately. They're coming off a nice win against Phoenix last week. But a couple bad losses to Atlanta, New York, Denver. But they've still within that. They've mostly been dogs, but they have been pretty good against the spread, 5-2 against the spread since Dame went down. And I just think that this is they also fall under a nice trend that I like to rely on late in the season, which is one that I call late season road favorites. So if basically game 70 and beyond, if the spread is 6.5 or more, and the reason I picked 6.5 is more than 2 possessions, right? If it's a greater than 2 possession favorite, they're 253, 196 and 3 against the spread, 56%, 9.5% ROI, and 13-6-1 this season for 29% ROI. If you up that to double digits, it goes to 94, 62 and 3, 60%, and then 16% ROI over the last 20 years all time, and 6-3-1 this season. So that's one reason that I like this play on the Bucks side. On the Philly side, they're terrible against teams that play with pace. They're 25, 50 and 1 against the spread on the season. But against teams with pace, if you faded them in every instance, 30% ROI for this year, which the Bucks are. They've been playing a little slower lately, which is maybe a pause for concern, but they've been good. I also think Giannis is just going to absolutely destroy this Philly team.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to get involved in a play on him too, but I almost feel like I want to parlay it with something like a halftime, full time, just like Bucks domination, Giannis over his points. But I do think, again, potential blowout factor. What do you think of like a Giannis points play here?
I like it. I think honestly, if you wanted to, you could maybe even tie it in. You could do like a little bit of like a PPD and maybe do like a 30 plus or a 25 plus. Mm-hmm. And like minus 10 or something like that. So you get like a little bit of extract like a little bit of extra value there. I think you might be able to get something done to get like a little bit of a better line on a Giannis prop. So, but I like it either way.
Yeah. So that's if you just take his points line, I did want the 30 plus. I believe I was looking earlier today. I would need to check again, 30 plus points. And then the halftime, full time, meaning Milwaukee just has to be in front at half and in front and then win the game. That was plus 129 on, I believe, FanDuel earlier. So that's a pretty good play, in my opinion. If you still are getting like plus 115 or better on that, I think that's a great look, because he could get 30 in 3 quarters easy against this team. They're the worst rim protection team in the league. So
yeah, I think this is a really sharp play, especially just to capitalize on the fact that you think Milwaukee's going to kind of blow their doors off. So yeah. I definitely like the angle here. Let's look at the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Brooklyn Nets. I was looking at, and I've been considering, I keep doing this. I keep betting on Knicks, like former Knicks.
It makes sense.
So the Wolves are 13-point favorites against the Nets. Totals 215. Brooklyn has been surprisingly feisty lately, 7-3 against the spread. Minnesota's coming off, obviously, a couple big wins for them. I think Minnesota can make their way out of the Western Conference play-in tournament and maybe even earn the 6th seed overall in the West. But this is a spot where Brooklyn has been so feisty and like keeping the team like in these games that I think that there's a little bit less blowout potential than normal, especially considering that Minnesota just played that double overtime game in Denver. I was looking at this and I was thinking, well, Randall has been crushing lately. He's crushed Brooklyn historically, and his points prop is at 17.5. He scored 20, and I think it's like 4 in a row right now. My concern is that double overtime game. So I was looking and I was like, well, maybe I can look at Dante DiVincenzo. He's at 10.5 points, and he has had a ton of success against Brooklyn. The problem is I'm not really sure how many minutes he's going to play. Minnesota's pretty healthy right now. And the one thing, and Andrew, I see your note in here in the file, but so I'm going to steal it right now. But I was looking at this. I was looking at this. He had one game off because he was suspended last game. So I wonder if he's like a little bit more rested. His points props at 10.5. I'm seeing a couple 11.5s in the market, but I like the over 10.5. I was kind of considering both of these. I don't think I'm going to fire on either just because Brooklyn plays at such a slow pace that I think they could get Minnesota in the mud, especially if they are a little bit tired after that double overtime kind of emotional win over Denver. But if I had to pick one of these, I like the DiVincenzo over 10.5 points. I think that would be the play that I'd prefer to the Randall over 17.5. But you've got a note here about the suspensions. Like, what even is a 1-game suspension?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. Like, in this load management era, like, 1-game suspension, like guys just take nights off anyways. Like, is that even really a penalty? Is that even a penalty? The only detriment is like, you can't choose the game that you're off. But like, I don't know. It just seems like it almost feels like any suspension should be at minimum like 2 games, just so that you have that consecutive game penalty, right?
Yeah.
But I like that. I like that Dante look, because I think Randall, with Nas back and healthy and rested from his suspension, might cut into Randall's points a little bit.
That was what my concern was too. I was like a little nervous about it, and it looks like, I think since the time we got on the show, I think this line has moved. So Dante's actually at 11.5 points now. So I guess I could have fired the market. The market tended to agree there. But either way, I think you're good even at 11.5. I wouldn't mind the play there either way. So let's look at the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Miami Heat. Memphis, obviously, we talked about extensively in terms of the Taylor Jenkins dismissal. Miami's been plucky lately, 8-2 against the spread compared to Memphis, 2-8 against the spread over the last 10 games. One of the things that I was picking up on in terms of why this firing happened with Taylor Jenkins was essentially there were some issues. I think it sounded like there were some issues with the locker room and the way that the team was running offense. They brought in some of these assistants. They brought in some of these ideas, right, to run like a heavy player movement, off ball movement type of cutting style of offense with good ball movement, instead of really what had made them successful with Ja Morant anyway, which is heavy pick and roll and Ja Morant just getting the keys to the offense. I think it helped unlock Jaren Jackson Jr. otherwise, and it helped unlock Desmond Bane, but it definitely cut into Ja Morant. And then Zach Edey was continually seeing maybe like 20 minutes a game. He's a top 10 pick in the draft. You can have your issues with Zach Edey, but there was clearly a decision from upper management that they liked Edey. Edey should have been a priority, and he was getting 20 minutes a game. So now we've seen Edey play 27, 14, and 32 minutes in the last 3 games. The 14 is really because he was in foul trouble immediately, the whole game. So I was looking at over 20.5 PRA against Miami, who also has a rookie big in Kel'el Ware. And they've been playing like a 2 big style lineup with him and Bam Adebayo. So I think that there should be some decent minutes for Edey. And I was also looking at Morant over 7.5 assists. I don't love it. I would really like a less juiced 6.5, but the only 6.5 that I see in the market right now is there's like a Bet365 has over 6.5 at -155, which I technically have as a slightly better play than the 7.5, but I'm not super interested in paying that kind of juice on this type of assist prop. But I think that there's maybe something between the two of them here, between Morant and Edey. But I like Memphis here at -4. I see that you kind of have some qualms about it, and you're more of our spread guy than I am.
No, I honestly, if this was a different, not a different time of year, but if they were playing so poorly, I would be all over Memphis here. I do project this closer to actually 10-point spread for Memphis. I have some projections that way more recent play, and that has it basically right around this number, which is why I'm staying away. But I think if you take the names off the jerseys, the way that Miami is playing right now, you don't really want to go against them as much as I don't really believe in their long-term success. I think if you take the names off the jerseys, Memphis is a tough bet on right now. Yeah. So that's my only hesitation, but I do like fading Miami in the second half. So what I'm going to be looking at is if there's if I'm getting a better number at halftime, I'm going to bet Memphis then. So I'm just going to wait it out and see how it goes. But.
So I will say, though, I agree with you in terms of the way, like the results that have been happening on the court. My issue is that I don't think Miami's played anybody. Like they beat Boston yesterday. So it's a back-to-back. And I think the win over Boston was significant, but they were missing a number of key players. The other wins in a row in the 6-game win streak, the Wizards, the Sixers, the Hawks, the Warriors without Steph Curry, and the Hornets. Yeah. So I look at that, and then I look at Memphis, who obviously is in a little bit of a skid right now, but they lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Lakers, the Celtics, and the Warriors. So the Warriors was because Steph went thermonuclear from 3-point range. So they're the more rested team. I think this is a great buy low spot on the Memphis Grizzlies. Like that's the way that I would be going. I like Memphis. I think I would lay with them here, but I do like your second half point because Miami's so bad in the second half throughout the course of the entire season. So a little bit of a battle there, but Memphis also likes to get out in transition. Miami's not the best defending transition opportunity. So that's my one kind of thing here.
Yeah, I like it a lot, actually. It's kind of one of the reasons if I think it's at 5.5 now. And so obviously, the market is on Memphis. Like you said, the Miami has this is one of the things that I've been locked into this season is something you alluded to is those teams that get out in transition against bad transition defenses. Like it sounds obvious, but it actually doesn't correlate with good transition offenses. Like efficient transition offenses doesn't matter against bad transition defense. Yeah. It's the literal, like just attempts, like the volume, like, so, and that's Memphis. So I do actually really like Memphis. If there was a 5 out there, I would bet Memphis. There was obviously one earlier. 5.5 is just a little bit. I don't want to get that hook. I don't want that hook, man. That's
I'm looking at my odds. I'm looking at my odds board right now, and I don't see any.
You see one?
There's like a fake 4.5 somewhere.
Yeah.
Like Sport Trade or something.
Yeah.
But no, I see. Oh, there's a 5 at Rivers, but it's juiced. It's like -121. Ooh, so that's kind of one of those like. Also, who can bet at Rivers? So
yeah.
So
that's almost where I would go like alt spread for Grizzlies because I could see the rails coming off, like the wheels coming off, whatever the phrase is. So maybe I might go that route pregame and then do that live thing that we talked about.
Yeah, but, I think that could definitely be an angle. But let's move on to the next game. We're looking at the Portland Trailblazers versus the Toronto Raptors. And I've got a player prop for you guys, but this is a game where Toronto has been just up to some preposterous shenanigans because they just keep ruling half the team in, half the team out, like every other game. The Blazers are 5-point favorites, and it's it kind of goes back and forth here. I do think that the Blazers are in like a weird spot because it seems highly unlikely that they basically need to win out. And then Phoenix and Sacramento to both kind of lose out, or Dallas to lose out for them to make a spot into the play-in tournament. However, I think that given where they are in the standings, they're just kind of like, well, you know what? We're just going to play this out. We're going to see what we have. And one of the players that they've been really giving a ton of run to lately has been Toumani Camara. And he has been incredible for them. He is just a defensive maestro. He's actually exactly the player that the Phoenix Suns probably could use right now. And they traded him with DeAndre Ayton to get off of Ayton for Yusuf Nurkic. Now Nurkic is on. They had to trade more assets to get rid of Nurkic. So I think this is a great spot for Camara. I like over 1.5 steals. I saw plus 114 at DraftKings. There's a plus 108 on FanDuel. But part of why I like this is he's kind of crushing the number. He's hit this in 7 of his last 10 games. He's averaging over this stretch. What's he averaging? He's averaging 2 steals per game. We're projecting him at about 2 steals right now. And I know that there is a little bit of caution here, but I think that that's what happens when you have some of these lower numbered props, or so to speak. Either way, I like Camara here. The Raptors play at one of the faster paces in the league. And given the fact that they are missing a number of players, and a number of players are in, a number of players are out, like Quickly's not playing, Jakob Poeltl's not playing, Grady Dick's still hurt. I do think that this is yeah, it's not great. I do think this is a good opportunity for Camara, who gets to play this Raptors defense that plays with a little bit of pace, and they also are top 10 in steals allowed to their opponents. They're at over 9 per game. So I think that Camara can pick up 2 here, and I like over 1.5. Sometimes just check your builders, because sometimes the 2+ is slightly better. But I got plus 114 on DraftKings with that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. It's nice to have a little defensive prop slipped in there. They're always a little bit of a sweat. They're kind of like threes, like they can just happen right away, except that they're even more like ambiguous, because it's like, well, what is that? Like, is that a steal? Is it a block? Like, what are we doing here? So hopefully we get there with no stat corrections. But let's turn to the real, like really the best game of the night is the Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Lakers. This is a game that is basically a pick 'em. The Lakers are 1-point favorites. These two teams are positioned in 4th and 5th in the Western Conference. Critically important game for a variety of reasons. Number one, there's obviously some tiebreaker implications. Number 2, the Lakers are 2 games ahead of the Warriors in the loss column. So this could not only narrow that, but it could also help, because winning the division actually matters, as surprising as that sounds to people. Nobody ever talks about divisions, but it is one of the primary tiebreakers in like the playoffs positioning. So if you're tied, but you won the division, like you're going to be ahead of that team. Also, if there's a 3-way tie, the division winner, I think, gets that tiebreak angle. So then it goes to head for the other 2 teams. So it's definitely an interesting situation. And I think this is a pretty important game. That being said, I'm obviously going to be backing Luka Doncic. I like over 44.5 PRA. I think that this is a game where he could see extended run as well. So he's been playing minutes in the upper 30s, and he's been maintaining a usage rate of about 35%, even with LeBron James. And over his last 10 with LeBron, he's hit this in 7 of those 10 games, and he's averaging about 46 PRA. Additionally, when we look at this individual matchup against the Golden State Warriors, he's hit this in 69% of games. So we love that nice number, dating back to 2002 or 2022 rather. And he had a massive 69 PRA game in his last game against them. So I think he's a really tough matchup for the Golden State Warriors, who are obviously playing a little bit smaller. I think that he's able to create not only for himself, but his teammates, and he can grab extra boards against this like slightly undersized Warriors team. So I like Luka Doncic to just crush the Warriors on tonight's really primetime game, really the best game on the slate. And I know you like Luka as well, so I'm going to just lay that right into you.
Yeah, no, I love everything you just said, because that plays into one of my plays, which is a kind of a fun one. I think this is one of the more fun bets that I've made in a while, because it's kind of a correlated same game parlay. I'm looking at Luka Doncic over 7.5 assists with Jackson Hayes over 5.5 points. And the reason these are correlated is that Jackson Hayes has kind of taken over that like lively role on the Lakers that Luka had with the Mavericks. It's a symbiotic relationship with, Luka throwing lobs to Hayes. He's the exact type of rim running center that Luka loves playing with. When Hayes plays with Luka, his usage and efficiency goes up. When Doncic plays with Hayes, his assist rate goes up. So it's this like beautiful relationship that they have. If you look at them individually, Hayes is over this in 4 of his last 5 against the Warriors since joining LA. And I think that's because like LeBron kind of uses Hayes the same way. Golden State doesn't really have that rim protection that could stop a guy like Hayes. Like Hayes isn't the best scorer in the world, but like the way that he scores is kind of like the perfect antidote or whatever poison pill for Golden State, while they do prevent rim attempts, they're 24th in field goal percentage at the rim. So I just think this is a really good correlated look. I got it at plus 211. Honestly, you could probably find it better out there. I would poke around at the various different sites. I also did a bit of a ladder. 10 and 10 each is plus 725. So 10 points. Yeah, 10 plus points for Hayes, 10 plus assists for Luka. Little 7-1, over 7-1.
Yeah, I like also too that what you did here for the baseline is you took it to the 6. Look, I get that you can kind of do you can play the whole game where it's like, all right, well, like I don't want to really tease it down by a half a point. But I think with a player like Hayes who isn't shooting threes, he's not always getting the free throw line. Getting the 6 is a nice spot where it's just 3 dunks, it's 3 lobs, and that's 3 dimes for Luka. So I do like this. I do like this play a lot for this game. I think I'm going to tell you on that one as well. So let's, unless there's any questions here, we'll think about your questions, put them in the chat. We're going to recap our plays for tonight's slate. So I like, and I'm joining you on this Paolo under the 28.5 points. I'm also looking at Dante DiVincenzo, his points over for maybe a parlay piece, Ja Morant's assists and Edey PRA for the Memphis Miami game. I like Toumani Camara over 1.5 steals. I like Luka Doncic over 44.5 PRA. What are you looking at, Andrew?
Yeah, so that Paolo play, we're both on. Milwaukee actually just moved to 11.5. So obviously market moving against me a little bit, but if you want to get in now, 11.5, minus an 11.5 for Milwaukee. I'm going to stay away from the Giannis one for now. I probably should bet. I really do like Giannis over points. So I'm not making it official, but y'all should bet that. And then, I'm going to look to bet Memphis at halftime. And then I'm going to tail you on that Camara play, the steals. And then I am on this SGP with Hayes over 5.5 points, Luka over 7.5 assists.
Yeah, I like it. I probably wouldn't add Portland as a parlay piece. I think that both, I'm not convinced that Portland isn't going to just pivot to a hard tank right now. So I'm a little bit nervous about that in terms of are they going to try to win? So I have some concerns there. And then I think Drew Timme has been interesting. He kind of struggled in his last game out there. I think if I was going to play anything, I would probably look at his rebounds. He's at 6. His props at 6.5. I'm pretty much right on the number. I'm going to see what our Rithmm stuff says right now, real quick for you. I don't think. Yeah, I mean we're projecting. Rhythm's got him at 10.1. So if you want to go all the way up, you can. I think he's got a good opportunity to collect some rebounds though, because Rudy Gobert is going to be playing. They always have a big on the floor. The concern is just, is he going to get into foul trouble between Randall, Gobert, and Naz Reid? So that would be my concern. But if you want to play 10 plus boards, I really don't hate that. I think that, or double. I think I'd almost prefer that to the 6.5. I think that he's either just going to do it or he's not going to do it. So I would probably go that way. And then I've got nothing, man, on Delano Banton, dude. If you want to play him, you can. He's always a little bit of a bucket. we've got unders on him almost across the board at Rithmm. So
hang on though.
If you were looking for an over, I don't know if I'd go that way.
I mean, let's real quick. Let's see what he looks like with Simons out though, because I do think Simons is questionable, game time decision. Yeah. I do think that could be a solid look. I mean, you never want to. It's like I just hate betting on guys like Banton because he's just not very good. Like,
no,
I don't know. I just like betting on guys that are good at basketball. But I just think like, and it's like, yeah, he's one of those dudes that'll just cook randomly, right? But he's kind of like, I don't know. He's the type of guy that reminds me of like the Hawks, where it's like you bet on them and they screw you. You bet against them and they screw you. It's just kind of feels like one of those things. So Simons is out. He says, let's look at
he just got ruled out a little while ago. Yeah.
So let's check Simons real quick. I know this isn't great content here, but Banton without Simons goes from 21.5 usage to 25.2 usage, and his points per his efficiency goes up as well, 22.9 per 100 possessions to 25.29 per 100. Kind of don't hate that. What's the number at? What's that Banton number?
Banton is at, I think he's at 8. What is it? He's at 5.5 dimes, 13.5 points,
13.5,
23.5 PRA. So, I don't hate it if like you really want to go there, but I'm not super interested in backing Banton. I think they have other players that they would rather play and kind of develop a bit.
Yeah, if the Mets get Vladdy Jr., I can no longer support you.
Well, we got
this is actually a New York Giants cap. Believe it or not,
he's just confusing. He's just confusing everybody. But guys, it was a pleasure doing the show. Andrew, any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
Nah, man, looking forward to one game at least.
All right. So yeah, guys, if maybe take a cat nap so you can stay up for the West Coast game, as this is another episode of Coast to Coast. For Andrew O'Connor Watts, I'm Joe Dellera, and thank you for joining us for Coast to Coast.